What's up, everyone? This is your boy Freeze, and welcome to my Deceptilab. Today, we're going to talk about last week's 5-star vote, which concluded on Friday with the winners for the next batch being Spinister on the Decepticon side and Rotorstorm on the Autobot side. So we'll just do a little bit of an analysis of the bots, some of the other bots that were in the running, and I'll tell you what I think happened that kind of pushed Spinister and Rotorstorm as the winners for the next batch. So let me get them set up on the battlefield. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. All right, everyone, welcome back. And we're here on my playtest account on the battlefield there. And before I get started talking about Spanister, I want to talk about some of the other votes, some of the ones who lost ultimately to Spanister and Rotorstorm. And the most alarming one for me, I'm going to start off, is going to be Rodimus Unicronus. Rodimus Unicronus was my vote. Autobot counterpart, obviously, is Inferno, and I just really like the ability on this one, just because for that ability you're getting a 40% increase to all types of damage, and so you're talking about normal damage, and you're also talking about abilities for 10 seconds. Now, what I've noticed a lot of people were saying is there were two things that really turned people off for Rodimus Unicronus. The first being, and we've had this conversation a lot on this channel, people just don't like rush in tanks. And so a lot of people is like, oh, it's another rush tank, whatever. I don't really want to deal with that. And then that was a lot of the conversations I was having in the community, whether it be via Discord, Line app, anything like that. So that was the first thing that kind of turned people off. The second part that turned people off is I think the timing was a little bit off. And the reason why I say that is because when you start to look at damage boosters in the game, so now you're having this vote at the same time as the endurance weekend for Tarn and Alpha Trion. Before that, we had Ariel and Scylla that were doing damage boosts. So the next thing I want to do in comparison is kind of looking at their abilities as well. Now, when I'm comparing Rodimus Unicronus to an Inferno to Tarn and Alpha Trion, the key difference here when you look at the ability is that you get so much more in terms of buffs to different bot classes. So it becomes a very universal bot. And so when I was talking to a lot of players, they were saying, hey, Tarn and Alpha Trion are out. It's 5 stars. They were going to put their focus on that as opposed to Rodimus Unicronus because he does a little bit more. Now, when you're making the comparison, the air class damage is, I think, is the key, is just because that's going to wind up being the same. You're going to get 40% whether you use Tarn or Alpha Trion or whether you use Rodimus Unicronus and Inferno. Um, but then with Warriors, you're getting more damage reduction. Arbiter on top of having your shield, and for some of your Russian tanks that have that additional 80%, special class will get more damage. And one of the key things when you look at like from a damage standpoint is not having to use a target for when you're using Tarn. So that was another point where people were saying, well, now that Tarn and Alpha Trion in there, I'm not really worried about Rodimus Unicronus. And like from that aspect, I understand. I do feel it's a little bit short sighted just because even with the special class having damage, the gunners having an attack speed boost, triple changes having reflection, and medics having additional healing, all counters and everything considered, I still would rather just have the bot that's going to do just the straight out damage. But they're starting to make more bots in here that are going to give some type of damage boost. So the next one I actually want to look at is I want to look at Scylla with the Autobot counterpart Ariel. Now, if you're comparing bots that give you any kind of damage boost, Scylla and Ariel, you can get with a little bit more of a cost of six plus 0, so flat 6 points. and you're also getting the element of that you can kind of use like a Megatron Optimus Prime type ability, more comparable to like a Soundwave Hiss, but you can have the whole team follow behind you, and you're still getting that damage boost. Now I've got the 4-star picture with a 30% damage. It's 40% at the 5-star level, but that's another bot, from the previous endurance event that has more health. Damage is a little bit lower, but you're making that up by having the whole team follow. So for people who pursue those bots, they're less likely to go and vote for a bot like Rodimus Unicronus and Inferno. So I also want to take a look at some of the bots that I feel like continue to get snubbed from, and that you couldn't even vote on these bots at all. So let's take a look at some of those names and talk about why they aren't being considered in the vote. Now, just about every time it comes up for a vote, I've always got to bring up my man Cutthroat as not being part of the vote. I think it's messed up. Cutthroat and Tracks should actually be included in the vote, just because when I look at it from a damage standpoint and a health standpoint, there was a point in time where you could consider this bot to be grossly overpowered. At this stage in the game, I removed Cutthroat from my team months ago, and there was a lot of reasons for that. Just because of the once they started doing FFDs, yeah, I'm willing to still get rid of the FFD, but I think the concern on Space Ape's part is that you're blocking so much damage. So I'm looking at this 4-star, and you're blocking 60% of damage. With the ability 11, you're moving 15% faster. The damage, the smoke lasts 21 seconds with at the ability 11, and a lot of people were saying that, hey man, this bot's grossly overpowered. Uh, I think with the counters, you have to burn ability points, and to be honest, if you look at it when you're using this bot and a lot of people are using double healers, that's actually a subject I want to talk about another time. But yeah, I just think that from a damage and health perspective, I think now that we're at HQ 18, I think it's time to go ahead and put him into a batch. The other concern that I have is if we do get to a point where we get 5-star combiners, by default, Cutthroat's got to go in there at some point. So if they're gonna make you collect each and every bot in order to get the combiner, so there's that. It may happen at some point. I would expect that we probably see a rework of the bot because let's be honest, his initial ability is only 2 points plus that 5. It's spammable since you're using 21 seconds. So I do understand the concern. I just think it's a little bit short sighted. Another bot that continues to get snubbed and not put into the vote is Dead End Autobot counterpart Cup, and it's just like honestly, I kind of felt bad because in the last batch, I was the one that got to make the announcement and make the announcement first. And I said, yeah, man, it's a special class bot that some of you been wanting to see for years. And everybody's like, oh, shoot, it's Dead End and Cup. And I was like, oh, no, man, it's Deathsaurus. So my bad on that. I'll keep that in mind the next time I do a batch reveal. But yeah, just with his ability to teleport and everything, he's got that good damage reduction going, um, and that immunity to stuns and slow. Um, got his own G1 core already good to go. Obviously, one of the premier bots to use for power leveling, especially now when we've got HQ 15 and 16. Zone 15 and Zone 16 reworks. Um, just makes it more efficient for leveling purposes. So a lot of people would love to see him as a 5-star. Um, Once again, I think this is one of those bots where Space Ape is looking at it as saying that the bot could potentially be overpowered. Personally, I found different base designs to try to counter Dead End. For any of you who actually follow me on TikTok, I actually it's been a while since I made a video, but I want to say my last video that I made on TikTok was how I use dead end, uh, or how I use a certain base design just in case anybody wanted to use dead end, and I kind of baited them into it, and it was hilarious. But so those all that considered, I think it's about time for dead end and cup to go into the batch. For the con side, you also go into the same situation that you have with Cutthroat, where if we have to go build an entire roster of 5-star bots and build a combiner, um, it by default it's gonna happen eventually. I just don't know when yet. Now let me talk about one other bot that actually lost the vote, and we'll talk about it. It's actually entertaining to me. All right, so Mindwipe and Cosmos wind up getting pretty high up there on the vote with that ability with the Sonic Disruptor. Uh, Basically, hacking a lot of people use it on defense, so hacking your opponents. And honestly, like Mindwipe and Cosmos have been higher than I wanted them to be in the last couple of votes. Um, they're just too vulnerable with them floating in the air for 20 seconds. They're essentially they're a liability in my opinion. The only now they seem to be a lot of fans in the lower levels, and that's who they usually stick in the outpost. But when I look at putting a 5-star bot, like, and then the conversation came up in a lot of different chats that I'm in, that well, every bot doesn't need to be a primarily war bot, but it's like it kind of does, because if as you continue to progress through the game, and as the HQ levels tend to increase, what you don't want to do in a 5-star batch, in my opinion, is get a bot that you're going to use for a little bit, and then they essentially become useless. Now, keep in mind, I don't use that term very loosely, but when I look at a bot like this one that's floating in the air for 20 seconds, there are a lot of different ways to attack him. It's just not a bot that I would pick to put in that batch. All right, so Mindwipe and Cosmos wind up getting pretty high up there on the vote with that ability with the Sonic Disruptor. Uh, Basically, hacking a lot of people use it on defense, so hacking your opponents. And honestly, like Mindwipe and Cosmos have been higher than I wanted them to be in the last couple of votes. Um, they're just too vulnerable with them floating in the air for 20 seconds. They're essentially they're a liability in my opinion. The only now they seem to be a lot of fans in the lower levels, and that's who they usually stick in the outpost. But when I look at putting a 5-star bot, like, and then the conversation came up in a lot of different chats that I'm in, that well, every bot doesn't need to be a primarily war bot, but it's like it kind of does, because as you continue to progress through the game, and as the HQ levels tend to increase, what you don't want to do in a 5-star batch, in my opinion, is get a bot that you're going to use for a little bit, and then they essentially become useless. Now, keep in mind, I don't use that term very loosely, but when I look at a bot like this one that's floating in the air for 20 seconds, there are a lot of different ways to attack him. It's just not a bot that I would pick to put in that batch. All right, so now I've got a picture of a variation of my war team. I actually slotted the 4-star Spinister into this team to see how he's going to interact with them. And let's take a look at Spinister's stats. Like we said, Spinister is the winner. He's definitely going to be in the next batch along with the Autobot counterpart and Rotorstorm. And let's look at what he does so well and how how he actually did go win this vote. So when I look at his 4-star version, his damage is all right. You know, I got the level 70 version up here, and I got him at 695.7 DPS. Health, he's a gunner, so his health is going to be relatively low at 1500. You know, there'll be a modest bump in DPS and health for the 5-star version. But I think what really is alluring about this bot is its ability. So for me, and one of the parts that I'll talk about the part that I don't like as much first, and that's like that he hovers up there for 20 seconds. Now I know when Thrust made it into the 5-star batch. A lot of people didn't like Thrust because they said he goes forward. I think a lot of that comes with game management. In this case, the way that I manage my game, with him hanging around in the exact same spot for 20 minutes, means that he has to do a lot of catch up. And for my gunners, I typically like to equip them with Fire Line and Top Shot. So when I'm looking at something like that, it just doesn't fit in well the way that I want. Like I still use my 5-star top fire line on my gunners just because well my 5-star and if I got more than one gun in my 4-star also. But I use that so that I can kind of combine with acid. So obviously you don't have to use that combat pairing. Um, but for the way that I play, that's what I find value in. And the cost is reasonable. It's 4+4. But the ability is you're shooting these long range rockets. And so in this particular case, it's 1,398 DPS. And every time that you destroy a target, you're dealing 30% bonus damage. Now, I'm curious to see if that bumps up to 40% bonus damage when you get the 5-star version. That'll be something that I'm going to push for when we start that in playtest. But the maximum bonus damage you can get for every as you destroy more targets will be 370 bonus damage. So what I can see in theory is if I go use some of my AOE damage abilities and I use Spinister for cleanup, he's going to wind up doing a lot of damage long term. So I actually put the volatile mixture core on him for that reason. Because he floats up in the air, you might want to go do your course different and try to focus on protection a little bit more. But we'll see how that goes. Let's take a look at him and a Prime League hard mode matchup. All right, so I'm on the test server and I'm playing one of probably the best players in Transformers Earth Wars and Yoda. And to kind of follow up on what I was saying, what I think I want to do with Spinister is try to take a AOE bot. In this case, I got Knockout to try to do some damage and try to use him Spinister for some cleanup. Let's see how that plays out. So I'm gonna lead in with Impactor, follow back up, and bring in Bludgeon, and drop the rest of my team. Now I still gotta focus on the cluster in the middle a little bit, but for everything here short, I can start using Spinister for some cleanup. And he's just going to continue to just boost up that damage while he's up there hovering around in the air. And he's going to get some really nice boost. So I think he's definitely going to get some value there. I think it's definitely going to be some value in using him. It's going to be great for cleanup. In this case, I was able to take out huge chunks of the base really, really early. So the hovering part that I was talking about, maybe I was wrong about it, or maybe it's going to be situational. You know, uh, that remains to be seen, honestly. And a lot of people were just saying that, honestly, that he's just a really fun bot to play with. Um, I always have a hard time with that concept just because, for me, just winning these war battles is fun. So um, that's where my focus is always going to be able to use them at top levels. But that's not the case for every player. Some players just like, Hey, and I get it. You want to enjoy the game that you're investing all this time and sometimes money into. But I say I do like the. I don't know what I did, but I got Spinister hanging on in there. But in a situation where everything's front loaded, you notice I haven't been able to use this ability a second time. Uh, now I am, but now's probably not the best time for it. So, I'm not really sold. I can see more problems than I can see solutions with this bot. To be honest, now am I going to be pissed off if I get this bot out of the batch? Probably not. But depending on who's in that batch, there's others that I'd rather see. And I still hadn't had a chance to use this. I just don't see myself using this ability that much because now I still gotta fight with a couple of different things. I still gotta fight up here with the combiner, and I also still got twin twist up here. Now that could be one good selling point is he's gonna be um, hovering above twin twist, but using it specifically for that, I don't really see it. Oh, now this might be actually be a good time to use his ability. I can get him to hover a little bit, and I might actually be able to pull off this battle. I only got 20 seconds though. And in this particular case, I timed out. But yeah, just going back and looking at that bot, looking at Spinister, um, I just want a little bit more. I just want a little bit more out of my 5-star bot. So I'll be pushing for sure to get more damage, to get more, the health I can deal with. I just want a little bit more out of my 5-star, and so it just wasn't my pick for this go around. Now I know the last time we had a vote, I wasn't really against him until I actually had time to think about it, and I was like, "There's actually at least one other bot that I really wanted to see." I'll actually talk about that in another video, so look forward to that to come out. But I'm in work of making a video. Is like, here's the sleeper bot that you should have considered for this batch, since you guys didn't want Rodimus Unicrons and Inferno. But as always, thank you for joining and thank you for your support. I still am going to be doing my weekly live streams on Wednesdays. It's always at 6 p.m. Eastern, unless I have to make any last second changes. So check that out. And I will see you then, and I will see you on the battlefield. Freezius out. What's up, everyone? This is your boy Freeze, and I just wanted to thank you today for coming by to watch my video. If you like my content, go ahead and hit the like button and leave a comment. And if you are not a subscriber, don't forget to hit the subscribe button so that way you can get notifications for all of my content as soon as it's released, to include my live streams that I put on weekly on Wednesday at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. As always, thank you for your support, and I will see you on the battlefield.